There we go, we're recording. Okay, like I said before, I like to work with my CSS and my HTML open. Oops. Side by side. It's definitely the way I recommend you work. Everybody see that okay? Can you guys in the back see that okay? Yeah? All right. Generally what I want you to do is lay out a bunch of HTML first and then start styling it. Now, on mine, I kind of laid out just the first part and started styling it because it's one of the more complicated things to style. Remember, we worked on just getting the image to be, this is that hero image idea where it takes up 100% of the width and height of your browser window at first, and then has text laid over it in the menu, and then the rest of your content is below that. I just have that HTML right now. It's very rough. Tried to make a mountain icon, which I'm not really happy with, so maybe we'll change that. But you know, for the most part, we got our nav moved over using Flexbox. Everyone should have done Flexbox Froggies over the break, so they should be. You guys should be somewhat familiar with how Flex works now. Hopefully, hopefully some of that sticks. You're going to be using it a lot, so if you need to refer back to it, you can also, instead of Flexbox Froggy, there's the complete guide to Flexbox. What am I attached to? Okay. Which gives you a breakdown of properties for the parent and properties for the children. That will be something we might reference here. So pretty much what I want to do is I want this to be in the middle over here, big, the Slivnica, maybe mountain underneath it. This little line of what it is, where it is, you know, etc. This is all going to be sort of centered. It's going to be white, and we're going to style the text a little bit, and then we'll move on to the rest of the HTML. So I've got my declaration blocks, which tie into the HTML elements, and then the ID and class names. I think I'm pretty much just using IDs right now. Haven't gotten into classes yet, but all right. Last thing we did, it looks like, is nav, top nav. So nav, ID, top nav, unordered list. I set a width for it, set flex, did space between, and took off the bullet points. That's all this stuff up here. It's touching the top. I don't really want that to happen, so I'm going to come back up to the nav, top nav parent. Do I have nav, top nav? Here we go. So there's some margin on there. Now to center it within this 90%, to center that width on the page, I set my margin to 0 for the top and bottom and auto for the left and right. That auto is the most important part. This top and bottom stuff are things we can mess with. I want to add a little space up here at the top, so I'm going to add a little margin. We might want to change it to padding. We're going to find out in a second. There's a couple different ways you can do this. When you're just testing things out, you could test it out here in the browser. This to-rem, a rem, I think I've said this already, but a rem is an acronym that means root element. Okay, it's a unit of measurement, just like a pixel or a percentage or viewport width, viewport height, etc. It refers to the default font size for your website, or the browser's default font size, which is usually 16 pixels. All right, so 2rem would be 32 pixels of space, etc. The reason why I don't just write 32 pixels is if someone has bumped up or made smaller their font size for the browser window, if I just put in 32 pixels, that spacing will always stay 32 pixels. Okay? If I put 2rem, it will stay twice whatever their default font size is, so the spacing will scale according to user settings. Okay, doesn't scale based off of the width of the browser. That's, if you wanted to do that, you could do viewport width. But if we were to change this to viewport width, like 2% of the viewport width, that's going to give us a gigantic space. Yeah, so we're going to use padding. Notice how it made a white space up here, how it moved the whole image down. Remember, margin pushes the entire container away from everything else. Right? Padding pushes the edges of the container. It makes the container bigger. Think a balloon, right? Something stretching the balloon out. Whereas margin would be outside the balloon. Right? Padding is always inside the container. Margin is always outside the container. So I want to use padding because I want the I want to keep the image touching the top. So padding, we'll go 2 here. So 2 for top and bottom. There we go. Gives us a little bit of space. Sorry, I picked up a chest cold over the break. Yay. I'm not liking this 90%. I think I'm going to make it a little narrower. Let's go to 80. Refresh. That's a little better. It moves it in. Okay, so this is not bad. That's about the amount of space I would want. I'm still not digging this icon. I don't know. We're going to play with it later. Alright, that's fine for now, and then I'm going to come down to the unordered list and change the color. So to change the font color, like color of text or type, you just write color. You don't write font color. I don't even think there's a drop down for font color anymore. Is there? Nope, there's no drop down for font color. If you don't have a drop down for something, then it's not going to work. So color, and then remember we're doing color in hex code. Okay, the shorthand for white is hashtag FFF. Because it's just 6 Fs. That's white. 6 zeros would be all like black, pure black. I don't know what middle gray is off the top of my head. I think it's F5. I think it's F5. But anyway, that's shorthand for that. You can also write in white. Do not get in that habit though. You can do white, red, green, blue, cyan, things like that. It's fine. It works. It's not the best practice, but it does work. So if you want, like I am okay with like the solid main colors being written out as a word, but I would be happier if you just got used to using hex code. Okay. So shorthand FFF. If you did want them to be a different color, you can do your Command-Shift-C to bring up your color picker. You can do color in RGB. You can do color. I would prefer you do color in hex right now. I generally only use RGB if we're doing something with transparency, okay? Because we would want that alpha channel, the transparency channel, to mess with. But hex is just RGB as well. Like the first 2 characters are the red value, the second 2 characters are the green value, and the last 2 characters are the blue value. Okay, but it's hexadecimal, so it's a mix of numbers and characters. Cool. All right. Hexadecimal is anyone know what hexadecimal is? No? Not a lot of math majors in here. No? It's a numbering system based off of 16. Just like decimal, right? Based off of 10. Hexa. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, I don't want that green. What am I doing? FFF. All right. What's up? All right, so that changes to white, which is fine for now. It's not the font that I want, did I? Oh, I didn't set a font or anything yet, so that's fine. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to move this in. I am recording for Helio, so you'll be okay. So I want to move this in. I want to make it bigger, and then maybe we'll go out and I'll show you how to pick a font and link to a font. Right, let's move on. So the H1, section ID 1. All right, so one thing we're going to do is we're going to take this value here, this value that we're only applying to the nav, this width and the margin. I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it up to, well, no, I'm not. Never mind. No, I'm not. Okay. Should have thought about this a little more. Should have thought about my HTML a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, all right. We're going to take that out. So it's a value that I want to apply to a bunch of things. I want everything to fall within that 80%. That's inside this container, right? Inside section 1. But I can't give it to section 1 because if I do, then the picture itself will become 80%. Does that make sense? We need that picture to be full size. So we need the section 1 to have these values set that we've set up over here. But everything else inside of it, we want to be that 90%. 2 ways you can do it. There's multiple ways that you can do anything really. You could say section 1, oops, and then you could say all the navs, the unordered lists, the H1, H3, H4, and P. You can just do this. You can string all those elements together and then give them all that same characteristic. Now if we come back, fresh, everything is now within that 80%, right? You can do that. That's fine. You'll notice it did mess up my menu though. Messed up a couple of things. So it's not always the best way to do this. This is not always the best approach. It can be kind of buggy. Your best approach is to come back into your HTML and put all of this stuff inside of a div. So I'm going to select it all and I'm going to hit Command bracket, right bracket, to move it all over one level. I indented it one more time so that I could say div, let's call it ID one box. I don't know, that's a terrible ID name, but I'm out of names right now. Start giving them Star Trek names, and that would be really helpful. So div one box here. So everything is inside of one box. If I come over here and collapse it, you'll see all that content is inside of there. Okay. So I just come down over here and I say div ID one box. Oops. That stuff. There we go. That fixes my menu that it kind of broke, and moves everything is spaced out the way it needs to be now. So, so that is that's the better approach. All right. Instead of trying to apply that same width and margin to all of those elements individually, put them in a container and apply it to the container. All right. That keeps some of the default settings that come with the H1s and the Ps and like the individual elements. It keeps them intact. Keeps a lot of those settings intact, which is important. So if you come across that when you're building your CSS, you're like, oh, I should have done something different in my HTML. Feel free to go into your HTML and fix it. All right. It's not going to really break anything. All right. Well, let's play with our H1 stuff now. So I'm going to come down to the bottom. Let's go div one box. I want my H1 to be in the middle. So I'm going to say, like anything, there's a couple different ways we can do this. Let's take a look at how we have it organized. All right, we're just going to apply something called textalign, and then we'll say center. This is just going to move the text to the middle of the container. Right? Move that H1 to the middle of the container. Then we can do something like, well, we could do it to all of them. So H3, H4, P. Should stick everything in the middle there. That's good. All right, then we'll come down. So they're all gonna share that characteristic. Then we'll target the H1 specifically to add some stuff to it. We're gonna make the font size bigger. So we'll go font size like, I'd rather you work in rems. If you wanted to, you could. If you wanted it to be, wanted that size to change according to how the browser width is, you can make it a percentage of viewport width. That would also be okay. So something like 12% of viewport width. Save it. Gets us something nice and big. That's actually about how big I want it to be. So I'm happy with that. Notice it made all this space down here and up here. If we inspect that really quick, you'll see there's probably a bunch of margin on there. Yeah, all that yellow space is margin. Notice all this empty space underneath the text as well. You guys see that? So the div for the text is this H1 for the text has this line height applied to it. Line height is something you can mess with in Illustrator and Photoshop anytime you are doing something with text, right? It's like line spacing essentially, like double spaced essays or whatever, like 1.5 space essays. That's all line height. Okay. In CSS, it's just called line height. If you wanted to tighten that up a little bit, there are instances where you would want to do that. You would just change line height and make it something smaller than the font size you set. Right, usually it's about 1 1/4 of what the font size is, or 1 1/3. So I'm going to go something like 9% of viewport width. Save it. Refresh. Maybe. Come here. All right, refresh it. So that made it quite a bit smaller, but notice it also changed where the top is. All right. So there's some things going on with the text that this type is not exactly in the middle of the div, right? This I think is a Firefox issue. because I'm not sure Chrome does that. Let me see. This is where we run into issues between browsers. Inspect. No, I do not want to change. Thinks it's Afrikaans. Nope. Let's close that. Grab your targeter. So yeah, it's a Firefox issue because in Chrome it's pretty much right in the middle of that line. Different browsers are going to handle the text different ways. Be very careful about changing the line height too much because then you'll cause text to overlap, right, in weird ways. But it should be changing its size. Yeah, it's changing its size. It's staying proportional to the rest of the elements on the page because we are using viewport width. So that's responsive. This I'm okay with right now. I'm not super happy with it, but I'm okay with it for now. I wonder if it's that padding. You know, I think it's that padding on the bottom of the nav. Let's take that padding off really quick and see if that fixes it. 0, 0. Yep, I bet you that fixed it. Nope, didn't fix it. So it might be something of like a line item center. Anyway, you can fall down a rabbit hole of trying to like make everything perfect on a page. Sometimes you have to just settle for good enough. And for now, we're just going to settle for good enough. All right. Notice everything down here is been pushed down though. So let's close that real quick. All right. So let's style this. Let's get rid of this giant space here. Do some stuff here. Let's actually find a font first. Fonts, google.com, or maybe it's just Google. Is it fonts.google.com? It is. All right. So this is Google's repository of web fonts. You'll notice over here it says there are 848 different font families you can pick from. There are a lot. I would sort. You don't need a monospace font right now. You don't need a handwriting font. I'm okay if you do pick a handwriting font for just like a main element, like a header element, like that H1, right? Just this part would be okay having that be a handwriting font, having that be like some sort of graphical font, okay? But BodyCopy, stuff that people need to read, only ever should be a sans serif or serif font, something simple, all right? Nothing crazy. People don't care what that font looks like, they just need to be able to read. That's all they care about. Is it comfortable to read? There's Roboto. I think what we'll do is we'll actually go serif. The more fonts you try to load onto your page, the slower your page will load. Oh, actually, like Roboto. Let's do Merriweather. That's a good one. Hit plus. Come over, check it out. You can see Merriweather. I haven't added any different weights. Right now it just says regular 400. These are all the different weights or different styles. I think it's a good idea to include like a light italic and like a bold. I like that black 900. But you'll see now it's telling you what your load time is like. You know, the more fonts you try to load, the slower your page will load. Okay, so it's usually you got to find a balance. You can use these in two different ways. You can download it and include it in the project itself. Have it be a local asset, like an image that is loaded just from the directory within the directory, or you can just link to Google's repository for it. So where it is on Google servers, right? fontsgoogleapis.com. This is going to be like if you don't have internet access and you're trying to load this site, like you're trying to work on it, you won't be able to load your custom fonts, okay? Because this reaches out to the internet and loads the font every time you load the page. But if you're trying to work on the site and you know you're not going to have internet access for some reason, you should definitely download it and include it in your project. Okay, so have it on your machine while you're working, right? But if internet's not going to be an issue for you, then this is totally fine. So I'm going to grab these links. Load time, moderate's okay. I'm not super concerned about it. Come back over to your code. This link needs to go after your style sheet link. Okay, So it's another link. This is the href, the hypertext reference for it. So I'm loading a 300 italic, a 400, and a 900. Now if I need to come over to my body and say font family, Merriweather, and then it's a serifed font, I believe. Yeah, it's a serifed font. Okay. You add that family declaration here afterwards in case for some reason it can't load Merriweather. It will know to load whatever default serifed font the user has selected, Times New Roman or whatever. Does that make sense? Yeah? If it doesn't make sense, say so. I'll explain it. Okay. All right, so we should be able to load that. Let's come down to our H1 and tell it a font weight to be. I'm going to make it the 900 for now. So font weight 900. And we'll see what that looks like. Boom. Oh, that's Chrome. I'm going to turn Chrome off for now. Oops. There you go. Reload. Nice and big. It's maybe a little too big. I don't know. Let's give it a color. That's not bad. Maybe we'll make it, let's try the 300. So if I want to do the italic, I do the weight and then I do style. Font style, italic. Oops. Can't decide. I like this one. But maybe we'll try the 700. Is it 400 or 700? 400. Really? Oh, because it's italic. Yeah. So here's the thing. Even though I didn't load the italic form, the version of the 900, if I write italic, it's still going to make it italic. It just does the only italic that it has loaded. All right, so notice I did 900 for the weight and I put italic. The only italic that it knows is that 300, so that's the only italic it's going to do. So it will override the style. It will override the weight with the style. Okay, so just be aware of that. Yeah, so let me load Merriweather here again. It's the bold italic. Slide it really quick. 700i. You can always come up here too and add them in. This is going to make it load a little slowly, but that's okay. That's better. I like the thicker one. So, okay, that's fine for now. We might come back and do a few things with it. I want to remove the margin on the bottom. To move the margin, we'll just target margin bottom specifically. We'll call it 2rem is usually, it's a value I usually like to use. It's 32 pixels. It's kind of a good default. All right, mountain. I think mountain needs to be, let's do that, div 1box h3, right? Yeah, h3. We'll call the font size, we have 12 viewport width for the main one, so let's call this one 8 viewport width. We'll leave the line height alone. Font weight, we're going to make this the skinny one, so we'll call this one the 300. Zoom tight. And color white as well. Hey, that's a little too big. Let's go to a little. You want to swap that out actually. So these are just style choices you can make. design choices you make as you're working. No right or wrong, just how you feel you want it to look. Okay, I can probably stand to make that a little bigger. And then let's get rid of the is it margin? Call it margin. See what it does. Yeah, it's better. Oh, that looks terrible on top of that like that. Try that. That's even worse. Black. Even worse. That can be a good color for that right there. So one of the issues with some of this is like a lot of this is accessibility issues. Like people that have a hard time seeing are going to be really confused and frustrated by you putting text over an image, especially in instances like this where it's really going to mess it up. Okay, so like if you kind of blur your eyes a little bit and you see that on top of it, it's going to be very difficult to read. One of the ways you can fix that is by giving one box, the parent for this container, which would be this whole area, which is actually maybe too much, would be giving one box like a transparent gray background, right? I think I would prefer to like group the text together and do a transparent gray background around the text. So I'm going to come in and change it. That's logo. Here we go. So I'm going to grab these, tab over, and then give it a div and just call it div ID text box. Grab that closing element, come down. All right. Now all of these declarations I wrote here should still work because I'm targeting in between the space here on the declaration block. I've left a space between the element and ID, the parent, and then the element that the specific element I'm targeting. The effect of this is that it applies all of these settings to every H1 that is within that whole parent. So if you have multiple H1s, even if they're like grandchildren or great-grandchildren of div1 box, they will all have these settings. Okay. If I only want the first level child, like the direct descendant of one box, the H1 that's a direct descendant, to have these characteristics, then I would include this right caret, this right angle bracket. Right? That says only apply it to this first level. Okay. I know it's pretty dry stuff, guys, but you gotta know it. So this will apply to all H1s inside one box. It doesn't matter how far away from one box they are. And then a right angle bracket would apply to just the one, just the very first one. So these should still work because it's not specific, and I've made them. This should still work. But let's give text box here. Let's go ID div ID text box. We're gonna give it a background color of gray. We're gonna do RGBA though, so we're gonna find like you could do a dark gray. Do this, but then we're gonna change it a little bit. So we're gonna add an A here, and then we're gonna add a fourth value. So comma. This fourth value needs to be a decimal of between 0 and 1. So like 0.5 would be 50% opacity, right? 0.25 would be 25% opacity. We're going to do 0.6 for 60% opacity, just for no reason really, other than just decided to. Refresh it. All right, so the line height is messing that up, so let's take that line height off. Okay, so that's a little better. It makes it a little easier to read. I'm not super happy with that color. So what we're gonna do is change that up. I don't have a good, well, 0 is black and 250 is white, so let's go like, I wanna lighten it up a little bit. So 125, this is like 50% gray. That looks terrible. Let's go 250 or 255, 255, 255. That's pretty much white. Also terrible. Oh, there's so much spacing stuff we have to work with here. Okay. Let's take our margins off. Margin 0. Alright, something is giving us a ton of space. I think it's this. Yeah, the H1. Find that H1. Say margin top 0. Alright, margin top should be something more. Let's try 1 rem. So then we can make this a little darker. But this will make things easier for people to read. If you're not happy with how this looks, you can, there's lots of ways to change it. I might actually make it a little less opaque. That's much better. And then we'll change this to be, let's go back to black. Oh, did I make it white? I did make it white. Oops. Oh no. Oh, that one black. That one black. This just seems harsh. Anyway, stuff to play with. Let's give let's a little, the text is kind of tight down here, so I'm going to give a little padding on the bottom to push the edge of the box down. So I'm going to say padding, top is 0, left and right, or left, I'm sorry, 0 is, top is 0, right is 0, bottom is what I want to add to, so I'm going to say 2 rem, and then give left a 0. Or you can just target padding bottom. Maybe we'll make it 1. 1.5. A little better. Okay, not bad. Still gotta do some stuff with this text here and then tighten up this. Maybe later we'll play with that color. So let's find out what's giving us all this space. Alright, still the margin, bottom margin, and the line height it looks like for this one. So let's go line height, we'll go 10, and we'll say margin bottom 1 rem. Gosh, that really just... Alright, we're going to have to add some padding to the top. 2 rem. Let's push it away from the edge there. There we go. Alright, that's a little better. It's not tremendous. That's a little better. And then we'll add, let's style the rest of this stuff. So, div, 1 box. Might as well keep our theme going here. H4. Font size, we'll call it, oh, that font size is pretty good. Maybe we'll leave font size alone here. Font style though, I want it to be italic. Font weight, let's make it the thin weight, the 300. Take a look at that. Maybe not. Let's make it a little bigger. So as you can see, there's lots of stuff to do constantly, all the time. We'll go 2% of viewport width. And then we'll say, I bet you the margin is on top of that. Let's stick it over here. Yep, so there's some built-in margin there. Tighten up that margin. Margin, top and bottom. Call it 1 rem, 0. So 1 rem for top and bottom, 0 for left or right and left. Tightens it up a little bit. Again, still not super duper happy about it. So this this paragraph tag, but we're gonna move on. The paragraph tag here, I want to do something different with this. It's right now it's the same width as its parent, and so the text is touching the edge of this background. This would be fine if we didn't have the background, but because we do, that makes the text feel cramped, like it doesn't have enough room. So we're going to make the width of the p tag be like 80% of its parent. Okay, so that's going to move it in a little bit. And then again, it's center justified because we do that text align center. We're going to make a decision about whether or not we want to keep that here in a second. So div one box p, we'll say width 80%. Make sure it's percent so it goes off whatever the parent width is. Probably going to keep the text align center here. Did I not save it? I didn't save it. All right, so that brought it in. Oh yeah, and then margin to center it then, top and bottom 0, auto for right and left. All right, centers it. That makes it way easier to read, but it is getting a little mixed up on, a little difficult to read when it's right on top of that, all that stuff there. So, couple of things we can do with that. We can try, I think we can do background blur, but I can't remember now. Yeah, that's not gonna work, buddy. Yeah. No, we're not gonna be able to. Not easily, at least. Yeah, this is the effect I was kind of thinking about right here. Drag this box and move it around. Okay. So what are you applying it to? Sorry, I just sort of looking at what they're doing here. Blurred background BG. Target. Blurred background. H2. Blah blah blah. Class related. There's no class called blurred background BG. Oh, it's up here. Sorry. Oh, it's the overall parent. Interesting. So how do you not? See what happens when you usually do this is the oh yeah, blurred image. Oh, all right. Well, that's exactly what I thought they were going to do. Yeah, no, that's too complicated. Usually, what happens, like if we were to apply, if you wanted to blur the background of your image, you could add it as just a CSS characteristic. It's totally fine. It's in there. It's called filter. Then it would be blur, and then a percentage for the blur. So like 80%. Okay. So then come over to your page. Do that. Doesn't work. Something's broken. Doesn't tell you why. Okay, all it tells you is that, what is that? Invalid. Oh, okay, it's not 80%. Sorry. CSS blur. All right. Font percentage. None. Oh, degrees. Oh, pixels. All right, pixels. Okay. All right, so let's do like 10 pixels. What's going to happen here is it will blur the text. Does anyone know why it's blurring the text? You think about the HTML structure. Why would the text also blur? If I add blur to the div that has the color, the background color applied to it. It's kind of a trick question. It's way simpler than you. Yeah, the text is inside of that container. text as a child inside that container. One thing I just thought of, though, is we could set, maybe we could get away with this if we do div text box, and then we say h1, h3, h4, p, and set their blur to be 0 pixels. I don't know if that'll fix it. Nope. So this h1 is inheriting blur from the, where is it? From text box for some reason. Can we just say 0? Why not? I think that would overwrite it, but it's not. So I don't see where it's getting the blur from the... Yeah, it's not even reporting that it's getting the blur from text box. It's just text box is just blurring everything. So yeah, that's one of those issues. So there's some complicated ways around it. If you really wanted to do that, you'll notice it's not blurring the mountain behind it anyway. So that was kind of what we wanted it to do. That is a complicated fix. The easiest thing to do, and this is kind of terrible, but the easiest thing to do is to blur the background image slightly in Photoshop and just reload the image. Like, from CSS? Yeah, but because the background image is being applied to the entire container, it will do the same thing. It's like if we come here and we say, filter, blur, 5 pixels, or whatever, 5 pixels. Oh, Fitler, filter, thanks. It does the same thing. So you're kind of damned. You can do some things like positioning and stuff to fix it, but for the most part, the easiest thing generally is to just do it in Photoshop and reload it. Unfortunately, it's just not something you can change on the fly then at that point. But anyway, so I think we're not going to worry about it too much. What I'm going to do is just make the background a little more opaque. So 7.3 will come to like 0.5, 0.6, 0.8, 0.7, something like that. It's not perfect, but it does make things easier for other people to read. Something else that is kind of a trend that is popular would be like a ghost box, which is instead of having a background color, you would have something like, let's turn this back on, overwrite it. You would have a border, so border, and then you'd say solid, 2 pixels, you give a width, and then, yeah, the color. And that's a pretty, or maybe not. This is a pretty trendy thing too. People do it for buttons all the time, but you still have that same issue of unless your image is slightly blurred, it's gonna look a little weird or be difficult to read for people. Okay. Overall, the thing you should keep in mind is that you want to make things as legible for everyone as possible. You're walking this balance between design and legibility. Okay. You're designing it so it looks cool, but also it's easy to read. All right, it's a razor sharp balance. Okay, let's move on because we haven't added any more HTML. I'm fine with the way this is right now. I'm not super excited about it, but it's okay. I am going to add one last thing. So this p tag, I'm going to change the font weight to be the 300, just to make it thinner. Damn it. What did I do? Oh, here we go. It didn't do it because I only have 300i, so let's add 300 and then take out the, so weight 300, 300i, 300i, 700. I'm just trying to decide if there's like a, I can probably get rid of the 900, I'm not using that. There we go. It just makes it a little thinner. Oh yeah, and then the background color. Let's There's a danger of making too many changes live in the browser, is you forget to implement them. There it is. You forget to implement it in your code. Let's go 7. All right, that's better. That's a little easier to read. So, okay. Now that we've got that, we can kind of move on. So this is how kind of narrow and wide this image is. Now that I've got, if I'm going to add the rest of my HTML after section 1, it'll give me a bunch of space to scroll down into down here, which is what I want. So let's come down to the end of that section, add section ID 2, seam tight, and then come back to your Wikipedia page to kind of decide or figure out what you need. I need these 2 p tags, essentially. So I'm going to make a div, I'm going to make a box to put them all in. We'll call it ID BodyCopy. And then I'll just make a regular p tag. I'll dump all that text in the p tag. For now, we are going to leave the references because I'm going to show you how to link to those references. We'll make another p tag, and that will be our second paragraph here. We have a lot of little links and stuff in here. I want you guys to make those active links within your text, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, it's good practice in building external links within your text. But for now, we've got that. If we come back and reload it, it loads all underneath it right here. It's all Textalign center for some goofy reason. Where are you getting that? It's just applying it apparently. So we'll fix that later. All right. So Slivnica, pronounced blah blah blah. Yeah. What are our links that we need? Generic Alps is a link, so we're going to right-click, copy link location, come into here where Dinaric is written, type in A, hit tab, that gives us an anchor tag, which is our link. Paste that link in there, and then move your closing element, cut it, move that closing tag to the end of the word that you want to turn into the link. Okay. So now I've turned in the word Dinaric, or the words Dinaric Alps, into an external link to the Wikipedia article on Dinaric Alps. Make sense? Come back, double check, refresh, Dinaric Alps. All right, and we can change how this looks and stuff. But for now, we just want to make these work. So you want to do that for all of them. I'm not going to do it right now, just in the interest of time, because it's already 10. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do my references next, and my external links next. So and then we'll come and we'll style it. Section 3, div. I tend to put everything in divs. You don't need to actually for this one. So we'll call it H2 references, and then we'll say so there's an ordered list, right? So instead of an unordered list, we have a list that is in numeric order. So we'll use an ordered list. We'll give it 2 list elements. So li times 2, hit tab, and then we've got this text here, and then this text here. I'm not going to worry about the little icons and stuff. I just want the text and the links. Oops. These need to be links as well, so it's a good idea to, right-click. Don't go there. Right-click on it, copy link location, hit tab, then hit A, paste that in there. You just hit tab in order to show the actual nesting, the correct sort of parenting that's going on here. It's very important that you show the correct parenting. So these elements are in line with each other on the left. All right, that is very important to me. I would like you to make sure that you do that. So LIs are lined up. These LIs are siblings, so they are in line with each other. This one. So see how this one's not in line, right? Command left bracket will move it over. Command left and right bracket just tabs in and out, forward and backwards. And then I need to. Your anchor tag can be just at the end of the text. It doesn't have to be tabbed down. All right, text doesn't need. I don't need to see that the text is a sibling or a child of the anchor tag. All right, just make sure you are putting your anchor tags on there. Okay. Oh yeah, and then I need to put the link in there for that. Okay. So an ordered list, then I have an unordered list for my external links. I will do my next section, section 4. We'll call it H2, and it's external links. Is it lowercase? It is lowercase. And then we'll say unordered list, list element times 2. Copy the text, dump it in there, copy the text, dump it in there, and then just make sure if it's a link, make it an active link. Okay? So right now, let's go back and look at our page. We've got our HTML in there, refresh it. So there's our kind of default HTML that we can now style. How you style this is up to you. Just remember that anything that you read like this needs to be left aligned and not center aligned like this. So I'm going to come down, or at least come back up here, go to my section ID 2. I'm going to do Textalign left. This will give you left with a ragged edge, or not. Oh, sorry. Let's do BodyCopy. So BodyCopy. It's just a div. All right, what's going on here? Seems right. Why are we getting center line here? That's really weird. Let's see if it's doing it in any browsers. If you are applying CSS and it's not working in your browser, open up another browser. Double check it. Still doing it here. Okay. All right. So then it's obviously not doing anything. Oh, because I told it one box. Not inside one box though. That's really weird. Okay. Well, that just means we. So there's like a general. Oh, that's why. I see. So it's applying, it says one box, and then it's the H1 in one box, but then the H3, H4, and P tags for the rest of the page. That's fine. It just means that you need to specifically target the P tag inside BodyCopy in order to change it. So you have to like target, it's not enough to just target the parent, you have to target the actual child. So BodyCopy, we'll say P tag, Textalignleft, that should fix it. Yep, sweet. But let's give BodyCopy some space here. So BodyCopy width, we'll call it 80%, margin 0 auto. There we go, moves it into the middle there. Let's make sure that we apply that to, let's actually, instead of that, let's go section ID 2. Do this. Sorry, I'm testing something here. See if we can string these sections together. Yep. All right. So you can string sections together as well. So I want all these elements to have that same value, so I just strung them all together. If you are setting like something like that somewhere else, like here, I'm doing it, I could actually just string them together up there. It's an efficiency thing. It's not a huge deal, but it does make things a little more efficient. Okay, in terms of code, gives you like three fewer lines of code. Right. Sometimes file size can be really important because it affects load time. We're gonna move this to the middle, I think. Okay, so right now this is actually not terrible. Let's come down and just double check. Let's add a little bit of space. So section 2, we're going to add some margin at the bottom of section 2. So top will be 0. Well, actually we're going to do this evenly. 3 rem for the top and the bottom, 0 for the left and the right. And of course it breaks that. Oh, because of that. I see. So let's specifically target top, and 3 rem, margin bottom, 3 rem. There we go. It just gives us a little bit more space here, puts a little bit more space there. I want to make it even for the rest of them as well. A lot of times legibility is just about consistency. So instead of making different margins for each of them, we're just going to add the same margin to all of them. Let's actually make it a little bit more. Let's go 5. Okay, so that just gives us a little bit more space, makes things a little easier to read. You could stop here. You know, this is not terrible. I'm not super duper into it, but it's, like I said, not horrible. It would be nice to do something maybe like section 2, give it a background color. Maybe just something very simple. Just for goofy reasons, I actually like DA, 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 dot, dot, dot. I think it's funny. That is terrible. That would, all right, doing that would actually necessitate changing some of this stuff, so doing it the way I want to do it. Body copy, section 2, go width, 100%, and then we will change this to be body copy. Now I'm doing this so that the color stretches to the back. There we go. Actually, you know what? Let's take that off. And we will do padding instead. So the color will, so padding, top and bottom 5 rems, and 0 for left and right. That just makes that color stretch out to the edges where I want it. So now I've got that, a little bit of color, and then a section of these. You could do each of these with their own different colored section or background the same way. You know, so I'm applying the color to the section, which is the overall parent. I'm applying the width to get it, narrower to make it easier to read. I'm applying that to the div that I stuck all the text inside of. So one last thing I want to do, and then I'm going to give you guys the rest of the time to start. Okay, find a Wikipedia page, start laying out your HTML, get your images, all that stuff. I'm going to move this whole block to the center of this window. Right now, having it just be up here leaves a lot of space down here and looks kind of weird. Also, when you get narrower, it does this, which is just looks bad. So one of the things we're going to do, you could just add a bunch of margin and stuff at the top of that container. So text box. Text box is what has my color being applied to it. Here we go. But instead of doing that, I'm going to find the parent. So div onebox. And I'm going to use some flex to play with it. I don't have just a one box on its own. H4, so I'm going to just do it right above here. So div onebox. We're going to turn on flex, so display flex. Then I need to say flex direction, column to make sure that everything stays stacked on top of each other the way it is now. Save that. Come back and look. Make sure it didn't break anything. Okay, nothing broke. Right, still the way I want it to be. Then I'm going to say justify content center. It's already in the center, so it shouldn't change. Okay. Then we're going to say align items center. Now that's this combination of justify content center and align item center that will move that box to the middle of the div, the absolute middle of both axes. Okay, justify content moves it in the middle of the vertical axis, right? So you draw a line in the middle of the screen. It's going to put justify content right in the center of that line. Okay. You draw a line horizontally on the screen. Align items is what puts it in the center of that. So if you have the cross axes, you need this combination of justify content center and align item center, and it's something you will use more than you think. All right. This is the way to get it to work or not work. Let's see. Align content center? Nope. All right. Div one box. Oh, because I have. Right. Sorry. This needs to be on text box down here. Haha. That is not it. Align self center. Parent has to have flex turned on for this to work, and then align self center should work. Should not work. All right. This is always fun when things break like this. Let's go back to having that over here. It's a good example. Text box, align self center. Obviously, didn't do anything. Self center. Nope. So why not? One box. By content center. Align item. This should have worked. Align items center. It just moves my menu over. Huh. Align content. Nope. That's crazy. Alright, well, this is when we're going to go check our guide. This should all work. Column, yep. Flex wrap, don't care about that. Justify content. Center, that's what we wanted. Align items, center. That should have worked. That should have worked. Alright, maybe we need to stick it on the... Is there some other like space issue going on? Well, I might have to play around with it some more. That should have worked. I don't get why that's not working. Shouldn't be a matter of display box. Nope, that's dumb. Don't be, well, hold on. That might not be so dumb. Flex direction. Column. And then justify content center and align self center. No, that's just within the parent. I want the parent itself to move. I want the box itself to move. Content. Huh. Man, this is going to make me batty. All right, well, while I'm figuring that out, you guys can get started. All right, so what you need to do now is find a Wikipedia page, start your project, so make a folder, make your subfolders. Remember this, if I just show this in the Finder, I've just got it within the class folder, practice. So you're always going to want to start a project like this, okay? A main folder, parent folder, two subfolders, CSS and images, and then your index.html, Okay, the index, remember, loads automatically if we go to like 324practice.com. Okay, we're really going to 324practice.com/index.html. It's like a ghost loading. Okay? There's a proper term for it. I just don't remember off the top of my head. So do this. Find your images off your Wikipedia page that you need to use. Oh yeah, I have that other image I need to use, so I'll throw that in there. And then get to work. All right. I will make this code available for you guys while you're working on your practice. Okay. But be aware that my code will not work for you if you just copy paste. All right. You need to try to understand what's going on with the HTML and the CSS. I get that it's totally new and fresh for a lot of you. It can be very complicated. But try to remember, at the heart of it, it's just a matter of grouping things together, thinking about how elements are grouped, okay, and then moving those groups, those boxes. All right? Any questions before you get started? All right, you have the remainder of class to work on it. You will also have Wednesday to work on this practice part of it, but then starting next week, I want us to move on to the actual final part, which is building your portfolio site. Okay?
Are we starting the practice already?
Yes. Yep. Yep. I'll make a Dropbox for it. Okay? Any questions? No? All right. All right. Have fun.